Welcome back to the Oliver Scholar CEO Salon Series with your host, Dr. Danielle Moss Cox. Grab a midday cup of coffee and join us for a conversation on changing the narrative for our youth with actor-entrepreneur Malik Yoba. From the ground up, he's flipping the hood. Let's find out how.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being patient while we dealt with some technical issues. I'm so excited about this conversation. If you're an OG like me, you remember Malik Yoba from New York Undercover and so many other roles that he's had over the years. But one of his primary passions has been uplifting young people across New York City. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So welcome. Yes, we can hear you.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can't hear you.
Oh, no.
I don't know
I
what
can
happened.
hear you.
Not sure what happened.
Oh, man. So what I can tell our audience is that Dr. Yoba is actually out in the community doing what he does best at a high school here in New York City. So there's a valid reason for our connectivity issues. You can hear me now?
I can't.
Okay, good. So let's just jump right into it. Tell us, what is Yoba Development?
Yoba Development is a dream come true. It is my company. We exist at the intersection of real estate development, media, and education. Our slogan is builder of people, places, and things, in that order. And so you mentioned I'm in the community. Yeah, I'm at Information Technical High School in Long Island City doing a visit with the principal who's bringing some young folks to our activation May 12th and 13th at the Brooklyn Navy Yard called From the Ground Up Flipping the Hood. And so for me, Yoba Development is a return to my roots. I started in education almost 40 years ago, working in high schools in New York City, helping to reduce the dropout rate by bringing young people things that they needed to make them want to stay in school. So that was opportunity, access to information, connection, mentorship. And so, I feel fortunate that growing up in the city, I've been exposed to a lot of things and a lot of pathways. And, I was actually at a restaurant last night, and it's a great new spot called the Good Good in Harlem on 119th Street and Park Avenue. A friend of mine opened, and I was talking to the chef. The food was amazing. Young black dude from Harlem, and I asked him where he was trained, and he literally learned to cook at Michelin star restaurants while on the job training in New York City. And he said, growing up, I want to do the typical thing, be a doctor, lawyer, policeman. And that was the extent to what he thought were growing up. Doctor, lawyer, policeman. And if we aren't in
I know he'll be back in just a minute.
in this world.
So you talked about your work being at the intersection of real estate and education, arts. How do those things come together for you?
I'm not sure what you heard last because I was actually in the middle of saying something and it cut off. So I'm not sure. What's the first thing you heard? What's the last thing you heard?
You were talking about basically a model of apprenticeship for education.
Well, yeah. So these things come together for me in an amazing way because the vision was I want to combine three of my passions: real estate, young people, and filmmaking. And so in a few ways they come together. So right now we run a real estate development curriculum for high school students out of the Brooklyn STEAM Center. So literally in the classroom, while young people are learning about the business of real estate, young people from the media pathway in that school, there's 5 pathways: construction, design and engineering, media, computer science, technology, and culinary. So young people are literally filming the classes. So they're learning about filmmaking in the classroom while they're learning about real estate, while they're learning soft skills like presentation, speaking clearly, having the confidence, whether you're an extrovert or introverted young person. They're learning the ethos of giving back. They're learning around how to connect with each other, learning storytelling. So, in a very holistic way, they get to learn about themselves. And I focus a lot on, this is the builder of the people part, right? As I said, the slogan is builder of people, places, and things. So, building of the people part is not just the information about the business itself, but information about self. Right? Not often enough are young people put in a position where they're asked to present, where they're asked to host, right? As a for instance, in a couple of weeks, I have 3 executives from BNY Mellon, the bank, coming to the high school because at our activation from the ground up, flipping the hood, the young people are going to share the stage with the professionals, and there's a panel called "What I Wish I Learned in High School." And so, prepping these young people to speak in front of a group of 500 people, having the confidence. And these are not kids that walked into the room super confident around getting up and saying anything publicly. They mumble. And so this is where the arts are really important, because you get to teach them about, as I said, self, about presentation, about speaking clearly with proper diction. And a lot of times educators, they will let that stuff slide. Kid will get up, and it's good enough for them that they got up and they mumbled through a presentation. But the actor in me, the director in me, the educator in me does not allow that kind of thing to happen. And so, the work we do is for high schools, colleges, and community, right? Because of my roots, it's really important to me to go back to the schools and start them young. And not only because I think it's important, but it's what they want. DOE
Right.
did a survey for spring break to see the things young people were interested in. Aside from getting a license and driving, learning about real estate was number 2. And that's
Wow,
what
that's
information
pretty
I got
powerful.
from that's what I got from the Department of Education themselves, right?
Right.
The people at Central. And so I'm glad that we're aligned with where young people are in terms of what they want to learn about. They're going to inherit this city, and particularly for Black and brown kids, most people have never even met a developer. They never met an architect, never met anybody in finance, right? And technology at the level that we're talking about, in politics, right? At community boards, land use, all of the things that contribute to our built environment that most people feel, In fact, a lot of these kids never even knew the word gentrification.
Right. They see
Things
it
we might
happening. They're experiencing it in real
They
time.
don't know what it's called.
And how did we kind of get there? So first of all, I have to say I can't wait to have you come and speak to the young people at Oliver Scholars. Obviously, we identify high ability Black and brown kids, most of whom are never identified as gifted and talented, for a rigorous preparation program, and then many of our students will transition into independent day and boarding schools. But we know it's a formula that works. Sheena Wright, our first deputy mayor, is one of the first Oliver Scholars, and so many others have gone on to careers in acting, engineering, education. And so we absolutely connect with what you're saying about a holistic approach. The cure for cancer might be staring right in front of us, but if we don't develop it and give young people the opportunities, we're going to end up right where we are. So you have this activation event coming up in May. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the work we do is for high schools, colleges, and community. So on a high school level, working at the Brooklyn STEAM Center, which is 8 high schools from Brooklyn and career technical education, as I mentioned, those 5 pathways. We also have a partnership with Pratt Undergraduate School of Architecture. So the high school students and the college students are actually working on. They play an integral part in the activation, right? So the students in the architecture program at Pratt are working on design elements that are going to be part of this activation. The high school students will support that, right? So we have a 50,000 square foot space we're building out with the help of Turner Construction, with DeGaulle Visual Solutions, with Feldman Lumber, volunteers from New York Life, from BNY Mellon, are going to build out this incredible immersive environment where we get to learn together, right? I've curated 54 of the most amazing ed- um, professionals, entrepreneurs, people across the gamut. It's not just real estate, in wealth management and technology. We got a sister who's given scholarships for Space Camp. She's a sister, Afro Latina, Venus Quatz from Buffalo, works in Alabama with NASA in Huntsville. And on her own dime, she's providing scholarships for young women to go to Space Camp, to follow her path, right? She works in cybersecurity for the government. We got people like John Crossman, who is coming up from Florida, who has a full ride master's degree program, full ride master's degree at the University of Florida for an eligible HBCU graduate.
Wow.
We've got, yeah, and there's a white dude that's doing that for our kids, right? We've got David Efisayo, who's has a company called Suchi, which creates college funds for students. But as much as it's for the students, it's for the adults as well, right? The professionals. We've got people like Mike Yan Alexander from Momentous Securities, who is looking at the different projects, 4 different developers who have projects who are looking for funding, have an opportunity for funding. So there's opportunities for JVs, for joint ventures, for those that don't know, for investment opportunities, for scholarships, for partnerships. It's about a really intentional way of putting a community together, creating community, putting young people at the center of it, and driving economic development, right? So whether it's real estate, whether it's business, whether it's education, whether it's politics, my background using the arts to educate and engage people is very much how I frame this. So this experience is a little bit of school, it's a little bit of church, it's a little bit of wellness retreat, it's a little bit of theater, it's a little bit of concert, it's entertaining, it's engaging. It ain't just a bunch of people sitting around talking about what they did, but it's about how can I help you help me help you.
So, people are watching this and they're going to be like, how can I be down? How can I get involved? How can I support this work? I know some of our own scholars are going to be really intrigued by what you had to say. So how can people support this work and get involved?
So they can go to yobadevelopment.com/events and / from the ground up. So on the website, you'll see the information. For every adult, and I encourage this, for every adult that buys a ticket, which is 2 days, like $75 a day. So it's $150 for the 2 days, which is incredibly, there's the book, The Science of Getting Rich, Waddles, where he talks about give more in value than you pay for in a dollar. And so that's really what this is, creating tremendous value for people at an accessible price point so that people can come. And for every adult that buys a ticket, they help underwrite the cost of young people getting there. So it's at the Brooklyn Navy Yard in this incredible space with 360-degree views of the city. A lot of young people have never had the opportunity to even see the city from that perspective. And that's why I chose the location. And like I said, it was a raw space, but by building it out to our own specifications, that also is a way where we bring the development aspect into the experience. And so from the young people perspective who get a chance to participate, we're professionals in the build out. But we're creating something very, very special for people to walk in there, have their minds blown, and then not just be encouraged, but also get put on, right? Create opportunities and relationships. And so we're taking this thing around the country. This is not just a one-time a thing. That's why we call it an activation and not an event. Because once Yoba Development activates this year. Like, next week I'm on my way to the African American Mayors Conference, working with that group, working with groups like NARAB, which is the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. They're in 46 cities. The Mayors Conference represents 500 cities.
Amazing.
And so it's really about this legacy work for me. As much as I love making film and television, which I'll continue to do, the goal has always been to build my own company. And I've had numerous companies. Some of you might have been to my restaurant, Soul Cafe, back in the day, or I've had a
Yes,
marketing company. I've had little dabble in technology, and I've got, I'm entrepreneurial, so I got, interest in different companies. But building Yoba Development into an institution that can outlive me, that can carry on through my children and other family, whoever wants to hold up the mantle of finding a very creative way to engage community in a very intentional way to scale opportunity quickly. We don't have to wait. Like I've never understood, with all the resources in a city like New York, why every young person in the city doesn't have exactly what they need. Doesn't make sense to me.
absolutely.
Doesn't make any
Absolutely.
sense.
So, can you talk a little bit about this balance between being an artist and an actor and having this entrepreneurial spirit? Because I think a lot of people who've seen you in movies, television, see that one dimension of your life. Like, how do you balance that? How do you prioritize that? What kept the entrepreneurial spirit going, even as the roles kept coming?
Thank you for that. That's a good question. So my father always said, build your own generator so when they turn off the power, you still have lights.
Amen.
I have that tattooed on my arm. I had a paper route from 8 years old to 16. I used to make leather bags as a teenager and sell them on the streets of New York. I had a little icy cart selling Larry's fresh fruit ices and frozen lemonade back in the day. I was a bike messenger. Um, I used to make, like I mentioned, the bags. I've had a restaurant, right? My restaurant, I was 29 when Soul Cafe opened. That was a dream I had when I was 19. I had a theater company. I tried to do my first event deal when I was 17, and that was getting a BMX track built in Central Park because I used to race my BMX, ride my bike over the George Washington Bridge to go ride in Jersey. I've had a theater company, Malik Yoba National Theater Company, where I toured the country for many, many years with plays. Other things in entertainment. I've always been entrepreneurial, and I've always been an educator. I used to teach at LIU in the continuing ed program from like 2009, 10 to probably 2014 or something like that. It was called The Working Actor. And a lot of times you're just an actor. People love to say, yo, what you working on? And that's a crazy question to me because you should always be working. Working as a working actor doesn't mean that you're only waiting for someone to give you a job. It means that you're writing, it means that you're developing, it means that you're producing, you're learning how to raise money, you understand marketing, you understand the value of pouring into other people, right? There are a lot of young artists that come to me with projects that I just did one last week, a film last week for a young guy who is building his business. I love his approach to the business
Hmm.
because he's about, let me own the IP, let me have multiple projects, let me do things at a price point that makes sense where I could sell it to All Black or BET Plus or some of the lower level 2B, right? But he understands business, right? He may not understand filmmaking the way I understand it, but being on set, he has no ego. His name is Antoine Allen Films, right? If I pull up and I'm shooting a scene, he's going to allow me to bring all of my experience from essentially, he says I was directing the scene, but, and he was fine with that. But what it was mentorship on set in real time. If I'm going to be in your movie, I'm not going to let you, the things that you don't know,
Hmm.
create an opportunity or miss an opportunity to help you grow in real time. So I'm going to teach you about camera movement. I'm going to teach you about production design, about performance, things to look for. So when you move on to your next movie and you work with people at my level, you now have this new experience. So the balance for me it's always been there. It's always been um, part of how I move. But in the last 5 years, my focus on yoga development, particularly through the pandemic, and
Mm-hmm.
we all sat down and you go, how do I really want to live? Do I want to stay on the hamster wheel of hoping that the next series is, or the next film is the one that gets you to whatever level people are trying to get to in this business? That's never really been my goal. My goal has always been ownership. And I've always, straddled the fence between, okay, let me go do this series, let me go do this film. But now that I'm in high school, and where I'd rather be right now than at this high school meeting with these students, because it's all part of my mission and building my company. And through my company, I have scripted content as well that we're producing. And I didn't just act in dude's film. I'm now his producer partner, right? And we have a whole pipeline of content that we can push through the system. So, in a lot of ways, this is the best time because everything has come together in a way that it makes sense for me. Um, where that feeling of like you're on a hamster wheel as an actor, like I've loved 30 years
And
of
not just as
traveling
an
around.
actor, right? Anybody who relies on somebody else for a check, right, doesn't have that same level of control over your destiny and how you express your gifts. So we have a question from YouTube, if you don't mind. Folks in the community are wondering what ages the program is available to.
So we work primarily with juniors and seniors at the Brooklyn Steam Center. So I think that's the sweet spot. Um, Friday the 12th is a school day, so principals, like the principal here, they're allowing X amount of kids to get out for the day to come, and then it's a Saturday. But I think 16, 17-year-olds is probably the sweet spot. But there's always that incredible 14-year-old or 15-year-old. So it's really up to the adults that are choosing to bring young people. But I think the juniors and seniors in high school is a good place to start. But you know, um, I would not suggest like an elementary or middle school kids really. But I think it's really those that are thinking about college, that are thinking about their careers a little bit more seriously, perhaps.
Great. So, okay, you have your activation event. You are touching communities across the country. What do you want this to look like in 5 years?
So it's funny because we're still articulating exactly what that is. I know for one thing, in New York City, there's 1.5 million students that go through public high schools. I want every single student that goes through New York City public high school to have at least a working knowledge of how the city comes to be. How does the built environment come to be? Because within that, you have hundreds of jobs and career pathways, right? You don't have to be a real estate developer. Whether
Right.
you might decide you want to do a mortgage company, a title company. People are like, well, what is that exactly? You might want to be an assessor. You might want to be a surveyor. You might want to be an architect, interior design, work in finance. We need a lot of that because when we go to get this money, which is one of the biggest hurdles,
Mm-hmm.
our faces are not in those investment committees at these banks. So the more of us that understand how money moves, where it goes, can play on that side. In America, we have a shortage of 7 million units of housing that we need. That represents over $1 trillion in business activity. Right now, white folks own 98% of the land in America, of the real estate. In 1915, we had 21 million acres of land as black people. Right now, we have 1.5 million. So, just from an ownership perspective, when you talk about where do I want it to see it be in 5 years, it's about raising the awareness and the consciousness level of our relationship to the communities we live in, right? I was one of those people when I had opportunities to buy in Harlem or the South Bronx where I was born. I was too bougie. I bought on the Upper
Right.
West Side by Central Park because I was like, I'm from
That's
the
my
hood.
old neighborhood,
I
Park
ain't
West
going
Village
back
over
to the
here.
hood. I wish I knew what I knew now, right?
Right.
And so, where we will be in 5 years, years, we will have national programs in schools. We will have, I won't choose a number in terms of assets under management from a business perspective, but we're making some movie content on your airwaves that we're producing that is encouraging, educating. I'm really not interested in doing things just for entertainment's sake. Like it's gotta, one of the things I learned doing New York Undercover, the amount of people that became police officers because of that show, I can't even count.
Right.
And that's
They
not
saw
why the show was
themselves.
great.
They saw
Or
themselves,
fathers, right? The amount of
right?
men that leveled up as parents because they saw
Right.
themselves, right? And so the same thing. I'm very excited about one scripted piece we have that hopefully within the next year or so will find its way on your streaming services. Um, that is set in the world of real estate in New York. Um, that is, I'm very very excited about it. I won't give up too much, but
Okay. Now we're
um,
all going to be waiting with bated breath.
yeah, and I'll be in it sometimes because it's really about creating for other talent too
Right.
that should be shining and let them have their moments in the sun. I would be behind the scenes directing, producing, um, and just continuing to build. You know, build the foundation out, build the business out. Um, but yeah, we're articulating, and one of the things that will come from this activation is there'll be some research and some data points that we'll gather that we could literally build strategy around as a community. And so I've been talking to the JP Morgan Foundation around that very specific thing. So it's not just about bringing people together to have this moment in time, but what are the takeaways and how do we build from that? And I'm sure there's going to be some amazing ideas that someone comes up with, or we come up with collectively that says we can do that, right? So um, excited to see what happens when you put a bunch of strangers that never met each other before in a room and 50,000 square feet and see how they turn up and what turns out.
Amazing. So I think my final question is a lot of what you've talked about is focused on this idea of service. And Oliver Scholars is built on three tenets: leadership, scholarship, and service. Um, a lot of times when people get to a certain level, the service piece is optional, but it doesn't sound like it's optional for you. Can you talk about why that has to be a part of how you approach all of these ventures?
Because I'm the message that I bring. Like this is not, you know, my father always said, and my mother, leave a place better than it was when you found it. He would say, if there's a crack, fill it, right? So I grew up, I remember coming home from school in elementary school, and there were two kids in the house that weren't our siblings. And we're like, who the hell are these kids? Well, their mother had a psychotic break and was at, my father took them in while the mother was healing. There was a family of five who lived in our building. The father was wrongfully accused of rape and did 8-year bid in prison. While he did his bid, my father took care of that family. When we ate, they ate. When we went school shopping, they went school shopping. Went food shopping, they came with us. And he took care of that family. So it's a service and contributing. But I'm also that person who people saw something in when I was 17. And I worked at the Upward Front After School in a program in Harlem. And a brother named Eugene Kitt gave me my first job working with kids teaching, theater and tutoring after school programs. People like Lori Meadoff, when I was 19, who hired me by the time I was 20 to work in 13 high schools with the City Kids Foundation and made me her vice president at 23 when I thought I
Wow.
was too young, right, to run a national organization. And when she first asked me, I said, no, I'm too young. I can't do that. But then I thought, if I worked at IBM and they gave me that opportunity, I would do it. So I know what it's like when adults see something in you and they go, hey, kid, you got something. Come here. Let me show you something. Let me put you on this. Let me show you how this works. Let me take you to this meeting. Let me sit you with this billionaire and watch how we pitch. Let me teach you to produce, how to direct, how to raise money, how to organize, how to facilitate, how to design workshops. So everything I'm doing, I started doing 40 years ago. And so for me, you know, it, it it's that, and it's being obedient, right? I was filming a show called God Friended Me, right? Where I was playing a real estate developer.
Wow.
Where I read the script and the character was saying the exact same things I say in life. The importance of providing a seat at the table, owning our communities, working together. I literally pushed the computer away from me. It was like, God, I see you. Really? And while I was filming that show at the Steiner Studios in Brooklyn, across the street is a friend of mine's real estate development, a guy named Scott Reckler, one of the most successful developers in New York, in the country, really. Third generation, by the way, right? So he's my age, and he got a two generation head start in this game.
Right.
Right. At that time, he had $74 billion under management, assets under management, at 53 years old, or whatever it was, 51. Right. And down the block from his development was Fort Greene Projects. And I thought about all the people that live in the projects, that walk by film sets and walk by construction sites and have no idea about the ecosystem that exists in these businesses. They might know a construction worker, they might know an actor. And I thought about the fact that I'm in both of these worlds. And I heard real estate, filmmaking, and young people. And I didn't know what that was going to be. This was 2018. And I shared this idea with some women who wanted to start a foundation with me. And I said, no, I got Yoba Development. Haven't done much with it, but I want to use this company to drive these, to combine my passion. One of those women sent me a deck 2 days later, and it was called I Build New York. She goes, that's your idea. And I took that idea to the developer and I said, hey, man, I really want to work on diversifying this business. And he said, I'll fund it. When he said that to me, I realized I now had a budget and I was going to shoot a documentary, which is now called The Real Estate Mixtape, which is about my journey pursuing my first development deal in New York, where I took 7 young people of color, random young people that I met, except 2 were my mentees. But the other 5, I just met them. Like, one dude was a busboy, kid named Von Thorpe from Harlem. One girl worked in a leasing office that I was at a meeting at one day, and I just told her what I was doing, and she brought her brother along. And for 6 weeks in 2019, I took them from the Hamptons to Newburgh, New York, and everywhere in between, introduced them to the movers and shakers of the city, created this content, which is the basis of our I Build New York curriculum that we now offer at the Brooklyn Steam Center. And when I look out the window at the Brooklyn Steam Center, there is Steiner Studios where I was filming God Friended Me. Wow. And there is the building that I was first inspired by. And so when you say, why is it, intrinsic to what I do? Because there is no other path for me.
Right.
This isn't like, oh, let me do this because it's a good thing to do. Nah, it's I am who I'm talking about. If you put young people in positions, the kind of positions I was put into, this is the type of thing that will be the result.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being patient. We got a little bit of a late start, but we appreciate you. We serve over 500 young people at Oliver Scholars. So I'm looking forward to exploring ways for us to partner with you and just elevate this work, elevate our young people.
Well, I would love to offer you the opportunity at the activation to talk about what Oliver Scholars does. And, there'll probably be some young people in the space that could benefit from what you have to offer. So we should, talk offline about how to do that.
Appreciate you.
And I love
Appreciate
those glasses,
everything you're doing. Thank you. Native New Yorker too, grew up on the Upper West Side. And like you, a lot of folks saw something in me at every juncture of my life. And got me to this place. And I think that's so important to name. I appreciate the fact that you called out some folks because nobody gets here alone and nobody has a straight route to success. So I really wanted the young people, especially, to hear that you didn't just pop up as a television star. There was a lot of work in between. There were a lot of highs and lows to get you to that point. So congratulations on everything. And thank you, everybody, for joining us online.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.